Good morning, Steve.
It's a wonderful Monday.
It's chilly, and we are on Car Chat. So, who do we have as a guest today?
Outstanding, David. I am so glad that you asked, David, because today we have Mr. Branden Murphy, and he is an estimator and project manager at Old Philadelphia. Thank you for being with us today. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Old Philadelphia?
Thanks for the intro, Steve, and thanks for having me on, David. So, Old Philadelphia Associates, we're a masonry restoration and waterproofing company founded in 1986. We're a minority woman-owned business, and we are union affiliated. We are in Local 1 of Pennsylvania and Delaware, and Local 5 of New Jersey. Those are the bricklayers and allied craft workers unions. And I'm an estimator and project manager. I attend pre-bid meetings, meet with engineers and customers, figure out what they're looking for, price the work, put together schedules, submittals, all that kind of stuff.
Now, let us know just a little bit about you personally. Like, beside preventing facades from falling off the high rises in Old Philadelphia City, what do you like to do on the weekends?
My personal hobbies, I love to golf. I love to ski. Those are my two things that take up most of my time. I love history, going to museums, walking around Old City, anything involving art, all Philly sports.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, so tell us, you just said something that caught my attention. You mentioned that your company is union affiliated, but why is that so important to use a union shop in, I don't know, cities like Philly?
Well, that's a good question, David. There's many benefits. So the unions offer a great training program for the apprentices. So they attend classes every week and learn the trade, and there's continuing education for them. So our guys are the best in the business. They're really well trained and well educated in their field. Second of all, working with unions, you're just going to have top-notch safety, and you're going to be working with legit companies. With unions, the guys aren't going to be, forced to do anything that they're uncomfortable with doing in terms of safety, and they're just going to be the best guys that you can get. Finally, I would say that in the city, it's good to use union companies, especially for our sort of work, which is mostly exterior, because it's so visible by everyone, where you never know who's walking by and looking at who's doing the work and checking on their safety conditions, things like that. Could be OSHA violations, and you just don't want that to be affiliated with your building. So it's just better to work with the union shop, especially in the cities, to avoid that kind of issue.
What does maintenance on the exterior of buildings look like for high rises in Old City?
Yeah, so it's important for people to recognize that all building materials have a lifespan. So really, every year they should be doing inspections, checking on, their sealants around the windows, see if they're cracked, checking on their paint, see if that's deteriorating at all, delaminating.
So you mentioned something, because I was going to ask you, how often should we perform? You just said a yearly basis is great, but what's the typical things that you see as a failure point on a high-rise building, for example?
Typical things that we see, like I mentioned before, like joint sealants around windows and doors. Typical, they can fail after 10 to 20 years, and that can just look like either cracking or separating from the substrate.
Now, you mentioned before that building materials have a lifespan, but I guess a lot of associations don't really realize that. How can maintenance be more cost effective than repairs? Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, is it better to maintain what's there than wait for it to fail and just replace?
Right, absolutely. So like you said, Steve, maintenance is going to be cheaper than doing a full replacement project down the line. So basically, for example, like in a parking garage, if you have a crack in your deck and you don't take care of it, salt water is just going to continue to seep in there, and people don't realize it until it's too late and they have bigger issues, and then that's going to cost them money down the line.
So here's a little bit of a curveball for you, and I don't want to get you into any kind of hot water, but I would like to have your genuine opinion. What is for you like the most challenging thing about working with a community association?
That's a good question, David.
That's a good question. Steve came up with it.
As I was saying before, it can be hard just to have the budget for the association. Some associations are better than others about budgeting for maintenance items. But as I was saying before, some associations just don't think about it until it becomes a failure. And then you have to, really scramble to find the money to pay for this kind of repair. Other things are just, conflicting board members. Some are on board with doing maintenance. Some, would rather save that money for something else or wait until it fails. And you have to kind of educate board members as well for them to understand a lot of these concepts.
Absolutely. So a lot of property managers, management executives, management companies, they watch these interviews, right? And so do you have any advice from your perspective as a professional, as a vendor, as a service provider for the managed world? Do you have any advice for them about the maintenance aspect of things?
Well, I would say, as I've been saying this whole time, just to repair things before it becomes a big failure, because, just preventive maintenance is huge. It'll cost you way less to do something.
All right. Well, thank you very much for all of that. And Steve, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. What do you find to be the most challenging thing to deal with a board or community association?
Well, I got it. It's a little bit of a curveball. Thank you, David. The most challenging is effective communication from what we do. It's really trying to bring information to the boards, trying to bring information to the unit owners. That's really what I believe is the most important, and it can be the most challenging. Trying to get people on board, especially with condo associations, where it's there's pride in ownership, but they don't always want to hear bad news. So it's difficult to communicate that to get the message across when it isn't favorable. But it's important. These are their investments. So in order to really protect your investment, we have to communicate. We have to provide information. So to get those messages, that's the biggest challenge for me.
Okay. Well, while you're at it, why don't you take us home now?
Well, Branden, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing with us. We like to give our guests an opportunity to thank somebody who's maybe been influential in their career, their life, their path. It could be a charity, maybe a mentor. Can you maybe share with us and our viewers somebody who's been important in your path?
Okay. Yeah, thank you guys for having me on the show. I'd like to shout out Mike Miller. He's been my mentor for the past 5 years since I've been in the office. And, anytime I have a question, he's always there for me. I'd also like to shout out Tyler Logar. He's with Joseph B. Callahan Engineers, but he's kind of encouraged me to get involved in CAI, and thanks to him here on your show.
Terrific. I know one of them too. Look forward to meet the second one. And Steve, Branden, we'll see you around next week for another car chat, guys.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
All right. See you around.
All right.